I walked into the classroom. The girls were hotly debating, looking worried. When I listened closely, I froze. The girls got weakness and nausea after the pool. Looked like they got pregnant after all. God, did my solution work? My classmates saw me, and lanky Jill reminded me that a strange liquid had spilled out of my briefcase into the pool yesterday. The girls demanded an explanation. I had to tell them that they were all pregnant, and it happened because of me. My classmates looked at me menacingly. Apparently, I was screwed. I actually created the pregnancy solution for my older sister. My sister Agatha and her husband wanted a baby, but they hadn't been able to have one for years. Agatha was in despair, and I was terribly worried about her because I had no one closer than my sister. Our parents died in a car accident when I was just a baby, so Agatha raised me. She worked hard and finally was able to send me to study and live in a prestigious boarding school for bright girls. Agatha believed that one day I would become a great chemist. I was really very capable, and I studied well, but I always wanted to thank my sister in some way. And one day, I had the idea to create a solution that would help her get pregnant. I secretly conducted experiments in the school laboratory. I had to be careful that my classmates and teachers did not guess anything. I didn't talk to anyone in class, so the girls didn't like me. And Jill, the upstart, was always bothering me. But I didn't care about the bullies. I was just thinking about my experiments. Before yesterday's swimming class, I finally got a solution that helped get pregnant. Now my sister could have a baby. I shoved the bottle into my briefcase and hurried to my room. To make it faster, I decided to go through the pool, but Jill blocked my way. She said sarcastically that she had been wanting to teach me how to swim for a long time, and grabbing my hand, dragged me to the pool. No! I tried to fight her off with my briefcase, but Jill held on tight and led me to the edge of the pool. I was terribly afraid of water. Let go! Suddenly, Jill slipped and fell into the water with my briefcase. I barely held on to the handrail, but I saw the pregnancy solution slowly spreading through the water. Jill noticed it too. Damn it. My classmates in swimsuits had just come to the pool. The class was beginning. I quickly took my briefcase out of the pool and ran away. I was hoping that the chlorine in the pool would neutralize the solution, but I think I was wrong. How else to explain the fact that now all my classmates had signs of pregnancy? And now I was standing in a school classroom in front of a crowd of angry girls. They immediately accused me of deliberately pouring the pregnancy solution into the pool. At that moment, the chemistry teacher, Mr. Traverse, entered the classroom, and he said loudly that tomorrow morning there would be a scheduled checkup at the doctor. Heck, such a coincidence was very out of time. The faces of my classmates were frozen with horror, and Jill hissed that if I didn't prepare an antidote to keep everyone from getting pregnant by tomorrow, she'd tell the teacher how I stole chemicals and used them for my own experiments. Then I would be kicked out of school in disgrace, and with such a recommendation, I would not be taken anywhere else. Not this. My sister Agatha would be terribly disappointed if I get kicked out. So I urgently needed to do something and neutralize the effect of the solution. I waited until the evening when the teachers had gone to their rooms, and then I crept quietly into the chemistry lab. I struggled with the formula for a long time, but nothing worked. It was almost night. I was ready to cry. But then the door opened and Jill came in. She rudely asked if the solution was ready, but I just shook my head. Jill quipped that I was giving up my position as a nerd, but suddenly she offered to help me. Well, come on, I agreed. After reviewing my formulas, Jill said that I was stupid and forgot to include one element in the formula. Man, she was right, but I knew that this element was dangerous and could burn the skin. Therefore, the chemistry teacher kept it in his office, which he locked with a key. Without thinking, Jill suggested stealing the key from Mr. Traverse's room, but I wouldn't steal from the teacher. Jill said she would do it herself and dragged me to the teacher's bedrooms. At Traverse's room, Jill ordered me to stand guard and carefully slipped into the room. I was terrified. What if someone saw us here? I could hear Mr. Traverse snoring from the other side of the room. Jill didn't show up for a long time. What if Traverse was awake? But a minute later, Jill triumphantly left the room with a key. She did it! We ran as fast as we could to the chemistry room. Jill put the key firmly in the lock, but the door wouldn't open. She turned it this way and that. It was useless. The key didn't fit in. I was desperate, but then Jill pointed to the grate outside the office. we could get in through the ventilation. Are you crazy? The grate was almost under the ceiling. I was afraid to even think about it, but Jill told me to hold my nerve and give her a lift. How could I hold such a big girl? But there was nothing to do. I bent over, leaned against the wall, and Jill deftly climbed onto my back. For the next couple of minutes, Jill tried to push the grate back, but it wouldn't budge. Jill, hurry up. I can't hold you for long. Finally, Jill moved the grate. She climbed in and held out her hand to pull me up. With difficulty, I scrambled up after her. We crawled down the dusty shaft on all fours. Cobwebs crawled into our eyes and mouth. It was a good thing it wasn't too long to crawl, and very soon we saw the grating behind which was Mr. Traverse's office. Jill pushed it aside and jumped down deftly, then helped me down. Thanks. We needed to find the right component for the pregnancy solution. We rummaged all over the office, went through the cabinets, and examined the table. It was useless. The component was nowhere to be found. But then I noticed a small box in the corner. We opened the lid. And lo and behold, there was the right component. But how to take it so as not to get caught? Jill handed me a rag. Great. I quickly wrapped the reagent in a cloth and we climbed back into the vent. Did we just rob the chemistry room? Crawling back was much easier. When we got to the hallway and I jumped down, I saw Mr. Traverse walking towards his office. Had he discovered the missing key? I backed away. But it was too late. Mr. Traverse saw me. The game was up. I had to warn Jill somehow or distract the teacher. Otherwise, we were screwed. Confused, I glanced out the window. Eureka! I walked over to Mr. Traverse, confused, and asked cautiously where I was. Traverse was taken aback, and I lied about being a moonwalker at night. Help me get back to my room. I begged him. Behind the teacher, I could see Jill's feet already emerging from the vent. Mr. Traverse hesitated, and I was nervous. But suddenly he took my arm and led me away from the vent. Now Jill would be able to get out unnoticed. Mr. Traverse escorted me to my bedroom. I waited until he was gone, and then I ran back to the lab. Jill was waiting for me there with the reagent. She admired my idea of a sleepwalker. Maybe Jill wasn't such a stinker after all. It was almost done and there wasn't much time to prepare the solution. Jill and I quickly prepared all the necessary components. I thanked her. I couldn't have done it without her help. Jill smiled and asked me why I was making the pregnancy solution at all. At first, I didn't want to answer her, but then I thought, after our adventures, we got a little closer. And I confessed that it was all for the sake of my sister, who couldn't have children. So I wanted her to have a child and she would finally be happy. After all, she replaced my parents, and that's how I wanted to thank her. And then I noticed that Jill was almost crying. What's wrong with you? Jill admitted that she also had no parents. She was from an orphanage, and she added that she was incredibly lucky to get a place in this boarding school. For her academic success, the orphanage paid for her study in this boarding school. And Jill should be the best here. That's why Jill teased me. She saw me as a competitor. In fact, she even envied my intelligence and talent for chemistry. I was about to answer when the door opened, and Mr. Traverse burst into the lab. Jill froze with the flask she was about to add the reagent to. God, we were screwed. Mr. Traverse immediately attacked Jill with accusations and said that this was her last violation. Jill looked at me hopefully. I was Mr. Traverse's favorite, and I could protect her, but I was afraid. I didn't want to be expelled. It would upset my sister. So I stared at the floor in silence and pretended that I had nothing to do with the solution. Mr. Traverse told me to go to my room and ordered Jill to pack her things. She was expelled. As she left, Jill whispered to me, "Traitor," and she ran away in tears. Once in the room, I couldn't calm down. Why did I get cold feet and didn't stand up for Jill? She helped me so much. She was brave and responsive, but I wasn't at all. Soon, I heard a commotion in the hallway. Damn, I forgot about the general health check. Looking out of the room, I heard the girls whispering angrily. I had set them up, and then I saw lanky Jill struggling back to her room, looking so miserable. It was because of me. I had to fix it. even if I got kicked out. I pushed the girls aside at the door and ran to Mr. Traverse's office, and I admitted that I had set everyone up by making a pregnancy-inducing solution. It wasn't Jill's fault. I got her involved in everything. Mr. Traverse looked at me gravely, and then he burst out laughing. I didn't understand anything. He sat me down in a chair and showed me the results of the health check. He said the girls didn't have any pregnancy. They just got poisoned with bleach in the pool. On this day, the cleaning lady went overboard with it. Then the teacher said approvingly that Jill had done nothing wrong. None of us would be expelled. But then he added sternly that Jill and I were still going to be punished for stealing from the office. The next day, we met in the schoolyard where we were supposed to clean up the leaves as a punishment. I immediately apologized. I was really sorry for setting Jill up like that. In fact, I would be happy to have a friend like her. Jill didn't answer for a long time, and I began to worry. Won't she forgive me? But then Jill gave me a hug. We've been friends ever since. Her former friends were shocked that Jill spent all her free time helping me develop a new formula. After all, I still hope to create a solution for my sister Agatha's pregnancy. Mr. Traverse volunteered to help us. If everything worked out, it would be a scientific breakthrough, and I believe in success because now I have such a super friend like Jill next to me. Did you like the video? Subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you. I was lying on the examination couch, and the doctor was running the ultrasound sensor over my stomach. If only everything would work out. But suddenly, the doctor stopped and looked at me in horror. My heart was pounding, and then the doctor breathed out. Your child is a demon. My heart sank, my vision blurred. No, not that. I didn't even think about getting pregnant before. In high school, I had the love of my life. Hero. I thought nothing could separate us, but then I found out that he cheated on me. It was a big blow. And I couldn't trust the guys anymore. Because of that incident, I turned into a wild child. I hung out endlessly and changed guys like socks. But one day, my life changed dramatically. I met Fred and I really fell in love. Of course, at first, I denied it and thought we were going to have an affair for a couple of weeks. But Fred wasn't like the other guys. He took care of me, always helped me, and never once let me doubt his loyalty. He wasn't interested in anyone but me. I tried to distance myself, but Fred kept asking me out, making me feel better with little things. And I didn't even know I was falling madly in love. So, instead of a couple of weeks, we met for 6 months, and I could not imagine life without Fred. Only with him did I truly feel happy. After my dates with Fred, I traditionally met with my friend Lara. We went to college together and she knew everything about me. So, the day after Fred and I celebrated our 6-month anniversary, I went to the cafe to meet Lara. I told her in detail that Fred had given me a surprise. He had arranged a picnic on the embankment. He ordered my favorite Italian food, the best wine. And then, when we were talking, he danced with me to the singing of street musicians. It was so romantic. But for most of the story, Lara was interrupting me. She always did so. She wondered what kind of movies Fred liked, what kind of wine he drank. I stopped paying attention to it a long time ago. But when I finished speaking, Lara suddenly declared that Fred was not a match for me at all. I almost choked on what I heard and stared at her in shock. What do you mean? Lara told me that Fred was a womanizer, and I was just a toy for him. He didn't love me. My jaw almost dropped. What made her think that? Fred was not a cheater, but Lara persisted, saying at the first opportunity Fred would run away to another woman. I couldn't take it anymore and shouted at Lara to shut up. Fred and I had been together for a long time and we loved each other, to which Lara said that we would break up anyway and left. I was completely lost. What happened to my friend? We had never had a fight before. And why would Lara think Fred was a womanizer? I went to college the next day, hoping to make up with Lara, but she was nowhere to be found. Strange. Maybe she was sick. I went to my locker, thinking, and froze. It was as if someone had poked the lock open. I quickly opened the locker and all things were in place. But then my eyes fell on the white envelope. I didn't remember ever having one. There was a note in it and a pregnancy test. Unused. I didn't understand anything and quickly read the note. Someone was congratulating me on my pregnancy. What an idiotic joke. I slammed my locker shut and decided to order a pizza in the dining room. My favorite food always calmed me down, but as soon as I ate a piece, I almost threw up. What the hell? I loved Italian food. Then I remembered the note from the locker in the test. I shivered. What if it was not a joke? I looked down at my stomach. It seemed that something moved inside. Oh no. Dropping the pizza, I dashed back to the locker and pulled out the test. My heart was pounding as I ran to the bathroom. I needed to find out now. While I waited for the result, I mentally prayed, don't let it be 2 bars. I squeezed my eyes shut and examined, looking at the test, and at the same moment, my heart sank. This was not a joke. I was pregnant. What should I do now? How would Fred react? Terrible thoughts came to my mind at once. What if Lara was right and he left me right away? I walked out of the bathroom with the test in my hand, my shoulders sagging, and suddenly I ran into Lara. She gave me a quick look and said sarcastically that I put on some weight. Had your stomach grown? A chill ran down my spine. I hid the test behind my back and ran to the exit. Someone found out I was pregnant before I did. I couldn't believe it. But I was even more worried about Fred. Lara's words were still ringing in my head. He'll leave you at the first opportunity. Tears welled up in my eyes. No, I needed to confirm everything. The tests can be wrong. I immediately Googled the nearest clinic and rushed there. The doctor saw me right away, and so I lay on the couch, and the doctor declared that my future child was a demon. I couldn't believe it. And I was crying openly. How was that even possible? It was like a nightmare. As if hearing my thoughts, the doctor showed me the ultrasound. It became harder to breathe. Instead of a child, there was a little devil with horns and a tail. My vision immediately went dark. I almost fainted. And the doctor immediately put ammonia to my nose. The sharp smell brought me back to my senses. But it didn't make me feel any better. My child was a demon. And the doctor only carefully added that now emotional stress was not recommended. I could hurt the baby. I didn't want a baby, especially a monster. My eyes immediately filled with tears. I quietly asked if I could have an abortion, but the doctor shook his head, only with the permission of the child's father. I was terribly depressed, and I was terribly afraid to tell Fred about the pregnancy. After all, I was sure he would leave me, but was there any other way? I sobbed. No. Fred had to find out. With trembling hands, I dialed him and asked him to meet me in the park across the clinic. The wait was terrible. I imagined how Fred would react to the news of the pregnancy, and I almost cried. On top of that, I was shaking all over. Fred would leave me. Lara was right. When Fred arrived, he looked terribly excited and immediately gave me a protective hug, asking me what was wrong and why I was so pale. I looked into his eyes and could not utter it. My heart was pounding, and I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. Come with me. Gathering my thoughts, I blurted out, I'm pregnant, and then I looked down. I felt like the silence lasted forever. But Fred suddenly lifted my face by the chin and gently said that this was great news. He was smiling. Oh, Fred, that's not all. Our baby is a monster. Fred immediately froze and asked, is this a joke? No, Fred, this isn't a joke. The doctor showed me the image. Our child is a real demon. I did not notice how I burst into tears, but Fred suddenly shook my hand firmly and snapped, we're going back to the hospital. I asked why. But Fred didn't seem to notice me. Did he still want to have an abortion? I sobbed again. When we got to the reception desk, Fred asked us to see another doctor for some reason, but the receptionist said they didn't do that. But Fred was insistent. Apparently, he did not want this child so much that he demanded the director of the clinic. And so I was lying on the couch, and the doctor was again running the ultrasound sensor over my stomach. Without saying a word, Fred stared intently at the monitor, and then the doctor said that I would have no monster. I immediately jumped. Is my child normal? But the doctor just shook his head. There was no baby at all. I was not pregnant. I stared in shock, but half an hour ago, another doctor confirmed my pregnancy. Fred suddenly dropped his head, clearly upset. So he wanted me to be pregnant? Fred, you didn't want me to have an abortion, did you? Fred looked at me in horror. Of course no. I just wanted to make sure. I wanted to see our baby. There was no baby. What was going on here anyway? I felt dizzy. Okay, that's enough. I needed to get some air. I jumped up and went into the corridor, but stopped at the turn. Lara was standing around the corner. I immediately crouched, carefully peeking out. What was she doing here? And suddenly Lara turned around. At the last second, I flattened myself against the wall. If only she didn't notice. I stood there for a while not breathing. Finally, I heard Lara's soft voice. That was close. But who was she talking to? I peeked around the corner and saw that Lara was holding something out to the doctor. I looked closer. Oh my god. It was the doctor who told me about the monster baby. Lara handed the doctor an envelope, thanking him for his help. She's not worthy of a guy like Fred. He should be mine. I was in shock. How could Lara do this to me? Because of her, I got through this living nightmare. I thought that I would lose everything. And this was because of jealousy? I was literally exploding inside, and I couldn't take it anymore. I came around the corner and shouted to Lara that I'd heard everything. I expected remorse, but Lara suddenly grinned maliciously and said that in any case, Fred was hers now. He left me anyway after the news about the monster baby. I was about to answer her when Fred came up behind me and gently put his arm around my waist. He didn't even look at Lara. He just said, "I will never leave you. You are my family." He was not at all afraid of my pregnancy. But on the contrary, Fred suggested that we thought about a baby as beautiful as me. I was moved by his words. We smiled at each other and looked at Lara, who was red with anger. She ran out into the street in a rage, and Fred bent down and kissed me. And at that moment, all the bad things seemed to disappear. One kiss from Fred made me feel like the happiest person in the world. This story only confirmed that he was my true love. A year has passed since that incident, and now Fred and I have a baby, and he is the most beautiful baby in the world. Not all like a monster, although sometimes he does not let us sleep at night. I don't hold a grudge against Lara, because if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have Billy. But since then, I choose my friends much more carefully. After all, a true friend will never plot against you. Did you like the video? Subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you. I ran as fast as I could. Behind me, the iron footsteps of those creepy robots could already be heard. Hurry up. The bunker is already close. Come on. And then a metal robo hand closed on my leg. It's over. I struggled, but suddenly my eyes began to close. It looked like I was injected with a sedative. I started to fall asleep. I felt so calm, and at the moment, I was flooded with memories of my parents. How I missed them now, because they were no longer alive. They were scientists. My dad and mom gave me all their knowledge and developed my talent for chemistry. I didn't have any friends, so I spent all my free time with them. But soon, the planet was filled with wild rats. They were not afraid of people at all and openly attacked them. It was even impossible to walk freely in the streets. The government instructed my parents to get rid of the rodents, and my parents began to develop a virus that would deprive the rats of the ability to reproduce. They successfully managed, but conducting final testing, they revealed a side effect for people. Any infected woman most likely would no longer be able to give birth to a female child. This could lead to the extinction of humanity. My parents told everyone about it and wanted to stop the development, but President Evil did not listen to them in order to use the virus. Mom and Dad refused, but they knew that this would not stop the president and secretly hid me in a bunker to protect me from the effects of the virus. The virus was used, and the next day, when I was communicating with my parents via video link, the servants of the president came to them. After that, right before my eyes, the robot split mom and dad with a beam for insubordination. The servants got sight of me on the monitor screen and gave the president information about the surviving daughter of the scientists. I burst into tears. My parents were gone. I was all alone. I couldn't trust anyone else in this world. The location of my bunker was not determined. I was safe and I had everything I needed. In addition to the food, my parents left me a lot of books and a screen where the main news was broadcast. From them, I learned the virus had spread instantly and had already worked successfully on rodents. All the channels were talking about it. Gradually, the anger gave way to apathy. I lay in bed all day thinking about what had happened. One day, I learned from a regular news release that the virus still had a side effect that my parents had warned about. Not a single baby girl had been born in the last few weeks. But my parents did not have time to make a vaccine that would have saved the world from the virus. That day I couldn't sleep until late at night. I kept thinking, and at some point, I decided for myself that at any cost, I would finish the work of mom and dad. My love of chemistry would definitely help me. I spent days trying to figure out the formula, but every time it turned out that something was missing. I was desperate. Food supplies in the bunker began to run out. I knew I couldn't go out, but I couldn't go any further without water. Then I covered my face with a mask and carefully climbed out of the bunker into the street. Suddenly, on all the street screens, I saw a video with the president's disgusting face. He was talking about me. What? He said that he was looking for the daughter of the dead scientist who created the virus, the only girl who was not infected who could give birth to a girl and save humanity. There was a huge reward for my capture. I was taken aback. If I got caught, I definitely wouldn't be able to finish the vaccine. I ran back to the bunker, but suddenly I was seized by the iron hand of a robot. Apparently the mask had slipped off my face, so I fell into the hands of the president. I was distracted from my memories by the voice of President Evil, not from the screen this time. I woke up in a large office. I was surrounded by a ring of robot guards, and Hotly Evil was not far away. The robot guards helped me, and I listened with disgust to the president's speech about saving humanity and the need for me to become an incubator for birth. This was the only way to save the world from extinction. What? Was he going to force me to give birth to girls? Well, no. The president told me to think about it and quickly left. I stayed in the office, surrounded by the robots. I'll think about it, Mr. President, but only how to escape from here. I looked around. I got an idea. I told the robot I was thirsty, and when he turned away, I grabbed a chair and threw it at it. I immediately ran to the exit, and suddenly there was a dead end. There was only one door on the right, and I rushed in. That turned out to be a chemical laboratory. I saw a young guy in a lab coat, with a badge with some kind of emblem on his chest. Please save me, I whispered. The guy looked into my eyes in a strange way and showed me to get under his desk. I barely made it. Immediately, the robots barged in. They scanned the room with their beams but missed the table as the guy blocked it with himself. Nothing was found and the robots came out. As soon as the door closed, the guy threw me a cloak with a respirator, and when I put them on, he told me to follow him. Why was he helping me? The guy silently led me to the back door. And suddenly the scientist stammered, "You have Dad's eyes, don't you?" I was taken aback by the surprise. "Did you know my parents?" The boy nodded, embarrassed. His name was Frank. He said he was an intern in my parents' lab, and then he blurted out that my parents' case was alive as long as I was alive. I was wary. He took me outside and then handed me a piece of paper with an address on it, saying that I could contact him if I needed any help. No way, I could handle it all by myself. I pulled my hood up and ran to my bunker. I continued to work, but the experiment seemed to have reached a dead end. The formula was perfect, but in practice, the substances did not combine at all. And then it hit me. I needed a laser cannon, but it was only in the scientific center. How do I get there? I spent the whole day trying to work out a plan to get into the center, but it just didn't seem possible. And just as I was getting desperate, I suddenly remembered Frank. He had to have access to it. I thought about it. After what happened to my parents, I couldn't trust anyone else, but still Frank worked with them. And he helped me escape. So I went to the address on the piece of paper. I knocked gently on the door, but no one answered. What if this was a trap? There were robots everywhere, and if they saw me, I was dead. Then the door opened. Frank saw me, and then he invited me to come in. From the doorway, I blurted out that I needed a laser cannon for something important. "It's about my parents," I added, looking down. Then Frank nodded decisively and said that if I wanted to get a cannon, we would have to go right now. We got to some slums in the rain. Frank went to the door of the rickety house, but instead of ringing the doorbell, he tapped a tune. When the door opened, I saw a guy in a threadbare robe. He had a badge with an emblem on his chest, just like Frank had when I first saw him. And then it hit me. I heard from my parents about an underground society of scientists who opposed the president. It was their emblem. The guy led us into the living room of the house, converted into a laboratory, in the middle of which stood a homemade laser cannon. Then I noticed the other guys in the room. Wow, how many of them? I wanted to talk to them, but Frank said we might have been tracked. We had to leave. We took the cannon and carefully made our way to his house. constantly looking around. When I saw my face and the amount of the reward on the screens, something went cold inside. Frank seemed to sense it and put his arm around my shoulders. We were saying goodbye when Frank blurted out that he knew what I needed the cannon for. It looked like I'd made a lot of progress with the virus vaccine. I was taken aback by his question. How did you know that? Frank said he was secretly developing a vaccine himself, and suddenly he timidly suggested if I would like to continue working in his home laboratory. I hesitated again, but considering that Frank had already helped me several times, I agreed. The thought that we were now allies made me feel so warm. As soon as we got to Frank's house, we went straight to work. We heard on the news that President Evil had increased the search robot army and increased the reward for my capture. It was necessary to finish with the vaccine as soon as possible, but the laser cannon for some reason did not help with the formula. We worked at night and I was dozing off when I was startled awake by Frank's screams. What happened? Frank was quick to say that the substances had finally come together, but he also added that there was something missing from my formula. Don't hesitate, speak. But then Frank hesitated a little and blurted out that to finalize the vaccine, we need to combine our DNA. The DNA of a man and a woman. I was embarrassed, but Frank took my hand and told me that we would definitely succeed. This is the last leap. We can't stop now. I looked into his eyes and agreed. Yes, Frank. Let's do this and save the world in the name of the memory of my parents. While he was setting up all the devices, I couldn't find a place for myself, but now everything was ready. I held my breath, and Frank only squeezed my hand tightly to take the blood from my finger. We added drops of our blood to a test tube and pointed a laser at it. At that moment, a bright flash lit up the room. When my eyes adjusted to the light again, I saw Frank smiling. It worked. Without realizing it, I threw my arms around his neck. We saved the world, Frank. But suddenly the door opened, and the president appeared with a bunch of robots. They had already snapped the handcuffs on my wrists, and then the president turned to Frank and congratulated him on a good job. What? The president added that Frank did the right thing. What was he talking about? I felt like something had split inside. So Frank was working for the president all this time? I trusted you. How could you? But suddenly Frank said that it was time to end it and rushed to the laser cannon, and in a second, everything was plunged into darkness. I blacked out. I woke up in Frank's arms and he carried me outside. Let me go, you traitor! I shouted, but he just gave me a big hug. I didn't understand anything. Frank quietly said that at first, he tried to make a vaccine himself, but then he had to get involved in a dangerous double game, working for Evil and collaborating with colleagues. But the vaccine didn't work, and when he met me and we continued to work together on the vaccine, he realized that there was still a chance to get it. After these events, President Evil claimed the salvation of the world for himself, but Frank and I were still given the title of heroes. The underground scientists, with our help, were no longer persecuted, and they were able to finally get out of their slums. Some of them even began to help get vaccinated in the help centers. Women began to give birth to girls again. Humanity will live, and Frank and I got married. By the way, now our DNA is combined not only in the vaccine. Soon we will have a daughter, and I realized that trust is the most valuable asset, because thanks to it, I not only saved the world, but also found a loving family. Did you like the video? Subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you. I proudly walked down the school corridor and imagined how I would spend my first lesson. Finally, I fulfilled my dream and became a teacher. And then I caught sight of the photo of the principal on the stand. Hell, it was Eric. When I was in high school, that asshole made my life a living hell. Eric and I were once best friends. I wanted to be a teacher, and he wanted to be a school principal. Everything was great up to one point. The best university in the country just announced an educational grant, but Eric and I agreed the strongest would win. But just before the competition, the whole school found out my main secret. I was adopted, and I only told Eric about it. My parents constantly reproached me that I was a stranger, and after Eric's act, everyone at school started teasing me an orphan, but something else became the last straw. In the final of the competition where I gave a speech, They threw garbage at me right on the stage and I was forced to run away. I had hated Eric ever since. I trusted him and he betrayed me. I was distracted from my thoughts by a familiar voice. Eric was waving at me from the other end of the school hallway. After everything that had happened, I was not even going to say hello to him. So I quickly slipped through the nearest door and in a hurry, I hid under the first desk I saw. Eric was calling my name and then he came into the classroom. His footsteps were getting closer. But suddenly the bell rang and he left the classroom. Crouching, I crawled out from under the desk and suddenly noticed the surprised look of a teacher. She asked me menacingly what I was doing here. I tried to lie that I just dropped a pen, but she didn't believe me. Damn it. I didn't want to sound crazy on my first day, so I told her how their principal, Eric, had ruined my life. I was hoping for some support, but Nancy, that was the teacher's name, defended Eric. She said he was a great principal. They just adored him here at the school. My jaw dropped in surprise. Nancy continued. When Eric came here, the school's reputation was as bad as it could be. The previous principal was accused of corruption and kicked out of the school. And then this story was discussed in the press. But with the arrival of Eric, the school became one of the best. She was saying something else, but I wasn't listening. It seemed I had just come up with a plan for revenge. I would frame Eric, and I would make him leave school. This was the position he had dreamed of all his life. And I would destroy his dream, just as he destroyed mine. I spent a few days thinking about the plan and decided that I should give Eric a sedative and take a photo of us lying on the bed together. I would blackmail him with a fake pregnancy. To pull this off, I decided to throw a kind of welcome party for the school and invited everyone to my house, including Eric. Let's see what he says. Before the party, I bought a strong sedative and ordered a fake pregnancy test online. Great, now everything was ready. I was looking forward to the evening and now it was finally here. The teachers had fun. We danced, talked, but Eric was still not here. Damn, I did this for him. The holiday was already coming to an end when suddenly Principal Eric appeared on the threshold. I cheered up and greeted him nicely. Eric apologized for being late and suddenly pulled out a bouquet of my favorite lilies from behind his back. Did he still remember that these were my favorite flowers? While the guests poured each other drinks, I quietly went to the kitchen and poured the sedative into a glass. Then I carefully gave the glass to Eric and made sure he drank it all. Wow, in 10 minutes, he would be sleeping like a baby, and I needed to get him to the bedroom as soon as possible. Eric, let's go upstairs. We have so much to discuss. I sang sweetly. Of course, he agreed. We were almost to my room when Eric stumbled on the stairs and almost fell. Damn, I overdid the sedative. I dragged him upstairs with difficulty and quickly opened the door to the room. I couldn't let anyone see us. Eric couldn't think straight at all and plopped down on the bed. I lay down on his shoulder as if we were hugging and took a few photos. Done. And now, 2 weeks later, the moment of truth arrived. I went to Eric's office and threw a pregnancy test right in his face. See what you've done? He immediately jumped up and began to assure me that he did not understand what I was talking about. Then I showed him a picture of us in bed and defiantly burst into tears. Maybe it's a mistake, he asked excitedly, but I shook my head. Eric, the ultrasound also confirmed. I'm pregnant with your baby. I continued. Either you write your letter of resignation today and I won't tell anyone, or I'll go to the press and give them our photos and this test. As I expected, this coward immediately decided to write a letter of resignation. I was about to leave when Eric admitted that he didn't like working as a principal. And now he could take care of the family. What family? Then Eric gently took my hand and said, "Do you think I'd leave you alone with a baby?" I was taken aback. What happened to Eric, who was willing to do anything for his career? Eric said he'd drive me and keep an eye on me for as long as it took. But as soon as we were on my street, I saw the fireman. Eric pulled on and then I realized that it was my house on fire. Oh no, I was in such a hurry that I forgot to turn off the iron. I wanted to run to my house, but Eric grabbed my arm. He told me not to risk my life. Now I needed to calm down. We could go to him and sort everything out. I tried to collect my thoughts. I really didn't have any other options right now. An hour later, we were at his house. I was in a terrible state, and Eric brought me a blanket. My eyes were closing, and I didn't even notice that I fell asleep in the living room. The next morning, I got out of bed, but suddenly I realized that I was in a strange place. Where was I? Oh, right. This was Eric's house. I cautiously went downstairs and saw Eric cooking something in the kitchen. As soon as he saw me, he put the plates of omelette on the table and invited me to breakfast. He was trying to be good again. That pissed me off. I lied that I was in a hurry to go to the hospital, and I decided to look for a place to move to. I was not going to live with this traitor. I didn't have any friends in the new town, so the first thing I did was go to that teacher Nancy. But she refused me a place to live, and everyone else from the school did the same. I allegedly framed their favorite principal and all that. So by the end of the day, I had no choice but to go back to Eric. I quietly entered the apartment, but then Eric called out to me. Damn it. He scared me. He was sitting on the couch in front of the TV, and it turned out was waiting for me to come. Eric invited me to watch a movie. Remember, we went to the movies together, he said. I didn't want to, but Eric wouldn't give up. What if I told you I'd bought your favorite pistachio ice cream? He added. I hadn't eaten since this morning. So be it. I decided to join him. For a while, it was easy for me. Eric was always joking, and I couldn't help but laugh. But then Eric touched my stomach, and I snapped back to reality. Soon, my deception would be revealed. I needed to move out of here faster. I pleaded fatigue and went to bed. I wouldn't be here tomorrow. I waited until Eric had gone into the bedroom, then decided to run. Still, it was better to go back to my parents than to live with a traitor. With the last money, I paid for a taxi, but at the station, it turned out that the ticket offices did not work. Damn it. Then, in the middle of a dark street, I noticed a man. Who was it? Suddenly, he rushed in my direction. It was a homeless man. I ran as fast as I could, but he was chasing me. When he almost got me, the glare of the headlights blinded my eyes. I tripped and fell to the ground. Don't touch me. The car stopped abruptly and someone got out. Eric, he shooed the homeless man away and helped me up. I didn't think I'd be so happy to see him. Eric said that he saw that I was not in bed and was very scared. As we drove home, Eric suddenly said that he didn't think he'd ever told me about it, but he'd been in love with me at school. What? In love? It was like being doused with cold water. And why did you start a rumor that I was from an orphanage? Eric looked at me blankly and said he hadn't given away my secret. The information about the fact that I was from an orphanage was told by the principal of our school. When he was preparing the documents for the grant, Eric wanted to tell me about it in high school. But I didn't even try to listen to him. I couldn't believe my ears. So Eric didn't betray me? As soon as we got home, I said I had a terrible headache, and then I rushed to my room. I lay in bed all night, tormenting myself with thoughts of what a fool I had been to get back at Eric. I should admit that pregnancy was a fraud. But then he'd hate me. And then I had the idea that if I told him I'd had a miscarriage, then I wouldn't look like a stinker to him. I went to see Eric in the morning. I tried to stay calm. Eric, I need to tell you something. I had a miscarriage a few days ago. Eric was silent for a few minutes, and I could see how upset he was. I needed to distract him somehow. Come on, Eric, let's go for a walk. You'll feel better. As soon as we got in the car, Eric said that we were going to the hospital right away. After what happened, I needed a full examination. What? Not that. My lie was about to be revealed. As luck would have it, the hospital was very close to the house, and in a few minutes, we were there. Eric parked the car and we got out. Eric, I can't go to the hospital, but he came up to me and gave me a big hug. He said he understood how hard it was for me. I couldn't take it anymore. My legs felt weak. Eric said he'd bring the doctor here. No, Eric, don't. There was never a child. I wanted to get back at you for betraying me at school, but I think I was terribly wrong about you. I was sure he would leave, but Eric just smiled calmly and said, even though you hurt me, my feelings for you are still the same. He took my hand and looked into my eyes. And then I realized, I don't want to leave anymore, Eric. I want to stay with you. A year had passed since that day. I returned to school and became the favorite teacher of all the children, but not for long. Soon, I went on maternity leave for real and became the kind of mother I had always dreamed of having. Did you like the video? Subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you. My friends and I were surrounded by a tribe of natives. Oh no, someone began to whisper spells in an unknown language. Panic seized me. No, I don't want to die. Not like this. I was friends with Lily, Jenny, and Dolly since high school. It seemed that we were completely different. But we were united by one thing. We all believed in higher powers. We were sure that various mystical stories were not just fairy tales. So we spent all our free time on occult rituals. We called ghosts, read the cards, and even communicated with psychics. How I wanted to see something mystical for once with my own eyes. And then one day, we were offered the tour of the Enchanted Island. Of course, we immediately agreed. A week later, we were enthusiastically exploring the surroundings of our hotel. Instead of rooms, there were bungalows. All the employees wore strange traditional clothes, but the coolest thing was the mysterious pound surrounding the hotel on all sides. It just charmed us. We spent all the time on the shore drinking cocktails, dancing, and just did not get out of the water. Our tour was coming to an end. My friends and I had a wonderful rest, but I was sad. After all, we never saw anything mystical, except for the fake costumes of the staff. The girls agreed with me. The hotel was not worth the money. There was nothing mysterious here. Therefore, on the last night, we decided to have a good time in order to somehow compensate for our disappointment. We drank several cocktails at once, got into the water, and swam for so long that it was already late at night. Once we even had to hide from the guard. When we heard his footsteps, we all dived under the water and held our breath. He did not notice us. He could spoil our party. I think it was about 2 o'clock in the morning when suddenly, the water in the pond lit up. I looked at the girls. They were just as confused. The water in the pond sparkled as if we were in the very center of a huge light bulb. Lily timidly suggested that it had to be some kind of illumination, but no, it was more like magic. Obviously, the spirits were trying to tell us something. Finally, we didn't come here for nothing. After a few minutes, the glow disappeared, and only then we went home, constantly discussing what we saw. Did we finally witness something mystical ourselves? What would that mean? Not believing our luck, I reached the bungalow and immediately fell into a deep sleep. In the morning, I woke up to the cry of one of my friends. What was it? Dolly was crying, holding something in her hands. There were the other girls and I rushed to her, but Dolly just silently handed us a pregnancy test. I looked closer and gasped. 2 bars. Dolly, when did you manage to get pregnant? You're constantly participating in some occult rituals with us. You just don't have time. Dolly just glared at me and whispered that she hadn't had a boyfriend for more than a year. It was simply impossible. But nevertheless, she was pregnant. It turned out that Dolly woke up early and saw 4 pregnancy tests on the bathroom shelf. We heard that they do this in some hotels. She decided to check one for fun, and it showed 2 bars. We looked at each other warily. It can't be. Dolly nodded at her stomach and said that she immediately noticed how it grew after swimming in the pond. It was definitely because of that stupid glow. My hair stood on end. The other girls and I immediately rushed to the rest of the tests. What if I was also pregnant? God, no. This was nonsense. But I was already feeling sick. Not this. 10 minutes later, there was a deathly silence in the room. My friends and I didn't know what to do. It seemed like it was some kind of prank. But it was real. All 4 tests showed 2 bars. Still vaguely understanding what was happening, we decided to get out to a local cafe. It was unbearable to sit in silence any longer. Somehow getting there, we settled down at a table. But the girls behaved very strangely. It would all be funny if it wasn't true. Dolly was crying endlessly. Lily was frantically trying to find something on the internet, but other users only ridiculed the query, is it possible to get pregnant from swimming in the pond? Jenny took a long time to order something from the waiter. But when her order arrived, I grimaced. She was dipping kiwi in ketchup. Who eats this? It's much tastier with mayonnaise, crossed my mind. I didn't even notice how I began to stroke my stomach myself. What the hell was I doing? No, we needed to solve something urgently. The waiter came up to us. He was wearing traditional clothes, just like a local. And then it dawned on me, he knew exactly all the legends and secrets of the island. I immediately asked him what he had heard about that pond, and then the waiter told us a mysterious legend. It turned out that the pond was dug in a secret place where at a certain time and under certain circumstances, you could get pregnant. It wasn't this way that the ancient tribe continued the family line. The tribe itself had long been gone. Only their distant relatives still lived somewhere in the jungle. Finally, at least some kind of clue. Half an hour later, we were already pushing through the impenetrable jungle. I knew that this was not an occupation for everyone, but I did not expect that everything would be so difficult. We were constantly attacked by a swarm of strange huge insects. Their bites made our bodies swell and itch. The unbearable heat made me dizzy. The sweat flowed down in streams. Besides, Lily almost stepped on a poisonous snake. Sometimes I thought we were going to die in this damn jungle. Therefore, I was terribly glad when I saw a settlement among the trees and vines. We would fix it soon. The inhabitants at the settlement looked at us with apprehension, but we immediately asked how to get to their leader. One of the natives kindly led us to the largest house in the village, but the leader refused to accept us. Had we come all this way for nothing? But then it dawned on Lily. She took off her favorite gold bracelet from her hand and hesitantly handed it to the leader. He looked at the bracelet with an arrogant look. But the chief took the bracelet and motioned us to the hut. Hooray! Well done, Lily! The first thing I did was ask him about the pond. Could we really get pregnant from it? The leader nodded warily, but said that they didn't use this method for a long time. Women who got pregnant in the pond gave birth to demon children. He narrowed his eyes and asked why we were interested in this. I swallowed. Demon children? They would kill us right now if they found out. Lily and I looked at each other. I think she was thinking the same thing. It was time to get out of there. But then Dolly, the most emotional of us, sobbed out that we were all pregnant. She was gasping for breath, asking the leader, "What should we do now?" I was stunned. Dolly, damn it. Why did you say that? Now we were in trouble. The leader looked at Dolly for a long time and then suddenly took a couple of steps in our direction. There was something sinister in his gaze. I swallowed nervously. He sarcastically said that there was only one solution. In order not to let evil into the world, this evil had to be destroyed. We needed to run away urgently, but we did not have time to move, as the inhabitants of the tribe surrounded us and grabbed our hands, not allowing us to escape. What the hell was going on here? The natives were whispering incomprehensible spells. Their strong hands did not loosen their grip for a second. I could not believe that all this was happening in reality. Then the leader spoke again. He was sure that the god of their tribe would definitely appreciate such a sacrifice. I couldn't see anything anymore because of the tears. Was this the end? And suddenly the people of the tribe laughed out loud. They let us go and smiled. This was a prank. Gotcha? Wait, what? I had no time to recover from the shock yet. The leader said with a smile that no one had ever been pregnant in that pond. We just turned out to be very impressionable. It turned out that the hotel staff heard how much the girls and I discussed occult rituals and decided to prank us. Of course, the pregnancy tests were fake, as was the legend. And the pond glowed only because of the backlight. I couldn't believe that we have been so played. Lily smiled awkwardly and Jenny shouted that they shouldn't joke like that, but I felt relieved. I realized that you can't believe everything. Any information needs to be checked, otherwise you get into such scrapes. It seems that instead of occult practices, it's time for me to improve my knowledge, for example, in physics or biology. At parting,
one of the hotel employees said that they had another offer for us. An overnight stay at the top of the enchanted mountain of broken hearts. No, thank you. I winked at my friends. Now you can't fool us so easily. Did you like the video? Subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you.